That's the greatest lie ever told, real talk. That's the greatest lie ever told, truth, God. So Jesus came on the scene saying he was God. Got men so mad that they had him crucified. But if you do the math and you real precise, then you will see that if God's Christ creation wants men to be his family and like we get life, then you must be a God and I must be a God. Then somewhere along the way they must be a mix up. That's that mix up that Jesus came to fix up. Died on the Friday, on the Sunday he was risen up. A new creation made just like God. And if you are with him, then you just like that. Express image of the Most High God. If you are God, that means you on it all. You cease from your efforts and sweating and getting all. What's left is for you to love the neighbor, give him all. Do you see it? Can you say it? Without the love of money, we get rid of all evil. Without the love of money, we get rid of all evil.
Remember that the sun was saved. Sing by the hands he raised. Sing that he came to save. And to the world of the day. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world in his hands? Without the life that he gave. Oh no, that your soul is dead.
I'm rich, the walk around the wheel keeps spinning. The rat keeps running, the rat keeps running. Fast pace, slow pace, middle pace, all the privilege, no pace. Going over slowly, going over fast, cause the rat race will keep you in the same place. Many man, name stays, money buys no faith. The more they drink, the more they get thirsty. Believe in big blessings, be granted worthy. Christ kingdom, in the hand, life and life more abundantly. You say you gotta run it.
Yo, brother man, how you doing? Let me put you on speaker. Before we start, we can have a little chat. Just accept my. I've invited you as a speaker. Speaker. Connector, brother. Can you hear me? Put 100 if you praise 100 if you can hear me. Or fist in the air. Can you hear me? Fist in the air if you can hear me. Fist in the air if you can hear me. Fist in the air if you can hear me. Fist in the air if you can hear me. Oh yeah, okay. Needless, thank you. I see you can hear me. Alright. Yeah, I think we can start. When two or more are gathered. Alright, okay. Rob says, how do I enable my speaker? I sent you an invite. You just need to accept it. Alright. So in today's discussion, it's entitled Life After Religion, Ascension or Descent. So I'll first start by explaining the title and not assume that everybody understands what I wrote there. Sometimes you think everybody thinks like you or whatever. Yeah, but anyway, so just to break down the title so that we're all on the same page. So basically, life after religion, that one everybody understands, is basically if you have been a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, and you are no longer that means you are living life after religion. And So the question that I have is leaving religion, because I feel that when someone finally discovers the truth that religion is a byproduct or a carbon copy of the ancient spiritual systems of our ancestors, which is now labeled by the same religion as pagan. So when one finally discovers the truth, and or whatever information they discover, some people basically just discover that, for example, I know people that only just discover that there are other crucified saviors, so Christianity was not the only one. So obviously people don't receive the knowledge to the same degree. So I would, so in my view, I would think that when one finds out that information and then they leave the religion, they automatically assume that it's ascending or moving to a higher level. But I also of the opinion that one can actually descend instead of ascend. So that leaving religion does not necessarily automatically equate to one ascending. So that is the discussion that I'm putting on the table this afternoon on a hot Sunday, tropical Sunday in Southern Africa. So the reason why I feel that this discussion is important is I have the church that I used to attend and all. I've seen many people that have left the religion and have gone into many other things, and then when you really look at their state, they doesn't look like they've ascended. But also during my Christian walk, my last Christian stages, I moved from various levels of doctrine, and these I shared with my cousin. I didn't share it with everybody because even the Christian religion that I held at the time, a lot of people would not be able to handle. So I mean, I think the concept of hell not existing is something I actually came to grasping as a Christian. I was still a Christian when I came to understanding that hell is not a literal thing or a place that one goes to when they die. And heaven is also not a place. So I was still a Christian when I came to that realization through my own studies. So my cousin, I remember, so whenever I came into a new discovery, I'd pick up my phone and call my cousin, and we'd have this discussion because my cousin would not shy away from taking me on the information. What I liked about him is that he never took debates very personal, or he wouldn't get emotional about it. Like a lot of people avoid debates because they think it's about people not liking each other or something. But they are very healthy because if I look at my walk, every step to the next level has been a debate. And a debate is not necessarily between two people exchanging words. If I sit and listen to you present, if I watch your whole video of you presenting a certain fact, and that fact contradicts what I know, and I sit and listen throughout the time, for me, that introduces a debate in my mind because I'm processing the information you're giving me against the information that I already know. So the last part of my discussion, obviously, with my cousin was my final transition out of Christianity. So the previous transitions were the transitions from doctrine to doctrine within Christianity, where I was basically slowly falling out of it. So when I took him on with the discussion, he obviously, so one of the other things I liked about him is that even though what I'm explaining to him made sense, he did not just accept it. He would play devil's advocate in order to test the information. So that's why I liked discussing with him. And so that I could also test the information, because conversations are all about testing information. If we are to grow, we need to be very comfortable about that, you know. So when I presented, I discussed with him why I was no longer a Christian. He actually couldn't believe it, and it made sense why he couldn't believe it, because I was the most devoted uh, person in terms of seeking knowledge within the Bible or in anything, more than anybody had ever met. I wasn't relaxed in listening to whichever pastor and watching his videos. I would be having my own questions and digging. So the last part. So when I took him on about the Bible, basically biblical history being non-existent, and that just being basically all allegories and parables at the end of the day, which in fact, in its original publication in the ancient times when the Bible was written, it was never meant to be literal. That became a political matter later on, which was mostly used by the Romans. But so when I had this discussion with him, and he's like, yeah, but what if the artifacts, for example, when you look at the children of Israel going around the mountain after having left Egypt, according to the Exodus story, they went around the mountain for 40 years. 40 years is a very long time. That means that mountain will be very rich with archaeological finds. If you were to dig there, any place where people have lived for that long, you don't have a lot of work. You just need to go excavating around that mountain, and you find a whole lot of stuff. But so I explained to him that the reason why there are no excavations in these areas is because the people that would have done these excavations know better than to waste resources on something that does not have any substance, or they understand that it's, at the end of the day, it's just allegories. And there's even a Jewish archaeologist that actually confirms that, and a second a Jewish author wrote the Moses Mystery, the ancient Egyptian origins of the Jewish people. It's one of the books in my collection. So, eventually my cousin accepted, but he expressed something very, very, very important that I hadn't really thought about, because I didn't have that problem in my transition. I realized some people will have that problem. So his thing was, everything that I'm saying in terms of facts makes sense, that I've presented to him, and he cannot dispute any of that. He's analyzed it, and he feels that I've got a case, and it's very strong. But his issue was, he specifically said to me, my issue is now, if I leave Christianity now, this has been my pillar, my foundation, my stronghold, my anchor for so many years. What do I move out of Christianity to? So that was his issue, and that is I realized it's a very valid concern, which I did not have, because I was already in pursuit of I had already attained, because for me it was more like an overlap. Before I left Christianity, I had already attained a lot of information around ancient African spirituality, the ancient Egyptians, the Congo, and the different types. So at the stage when I left Christianity, for me it was like, okay, there's this fact, and then there's the Bible. And I even 2018, it was actually after coming back from Egypt, I decided I'm going to go and see for myself the things that I've read in the books. And so when I came back, I was caught in a catch-22 situation where I'd seen the facts and now I had to decide. And I decided at the time that, well, both of them, the African spirituality and the Bible, are part of the same, uh, rather progression or something, like as if the Bible, if you look at it from the Bible perspective, it says first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. So if you look at the so-called the concept of the Old Testament, the New Testament is that God first went to the Jews in order to reach the whole world. So it's a move from, even when you study the Bible in terms of the Passover. The Passover was first for a family, then it became a Passover lamb for the nation of Israel, then it became a Passover lamb for the world. So if you look at if you look at that whole transition, so I then added to that in my own head. I'm like, well, I guess it was first to the ancient Egyptians, or first to the ancient Africans, and then it went then to the Jews, and then to the world. And it was like it's part of the same message, just progressing. So I accepted it. I'm like, I'm still a Christian. I'm just acknowledging the origins. But then eventually I found that I could not sustain that, because my very own Bible was condemning the very source of their religion. So that's when I decided, can't serve two masters, as the Bible even says. You either love the other and despise the one. So I then let it go. Obviously, not something that I shared with my entire family, but with only my siblings and a few of my cousins. A lot of the people, obviously, in the family, we grew up from a very, very, very Christian background. So people would be devastated. So yeah, and so I do wonder then, what a lot of people who have really transitioned from the Abrahamic religions, what they had to go through. Did you have a wilderness moment? By wilderness moment, I mean, if you look at the concept of the Bible, is that when you leave, even though I hate the Exodus analogy that paints Egypt as a place of bondage where you then transition to the land of promise, but I'm just going to use it because of we are already talking about the Bible. So that concept paints Egypt as a land of bondage where you then go to the promised land. But in that concept, you do not directly transition into the promised land. You have to go through the wilderness where you are prepared for the promised land. And so when I look at that whole parable, I see it very, very relevant for a lot of transitions in life. And when I also look at the transition from religion, a lot of that might be very necessary for, I think, in general, for almost everybody. Um, and because now when you leave religion, you might find yourself in no man's land, in the wilderness. So what do I hold on to? So an example that I would like to give of a descent, of someone that has left religion and moving into descent, would be someone that then says they are an atheist. And I guess if someone's an atheist, they obviously want to defend their position. However, as Africans, if you say because I, as an African, my stand is that I did not define myself. The name that I have Maybe the only name that I've given myself is the one I use on social media. But the name that my parents gave me, they did not negotiate with me. My last name is not a name I chose, it's the name of my ancestors. That is my identity. So my identity has nothing to do with my opinion, whether I like my identity, who I am, because that's who my ancestors are, that's what they call me. So as an African, I do not subscribe to the whole concept of someone choosing identity. That's just me. I don't, it's un-African actually. So you, if you are a, for example, in African culture, we have totems, and if someone is Ngwenya, so the ancient people, uh, and the elders also. I like speaking to the elders, and I recently spoke to one of the Zulu elders, and I wanted to confirm with him. I had my own ideas about people that are afraid of cats, and I said to him, Baba, my view is that people that are afraid of cats, they might belong to a totem related to snakes, like for example, surnames like Majola. And so the elder smiled, he laughed a bit. He's like, yeah, I mean, if you are truly Ngwenya, this is what the elders and the ancestors have always believed. It's not really, uh, if you think it's a superstition, it's not really something we are discussing today anyway. But they believe if you are a true Ngwenya, like truly your bloodline is Ngwenya, a Ngwenya is a crocodile, then it means a crocodile will not eat you. You can cross the river. So it's one of the things they believe. So when I said that to him, he basically confirmed it. I figured it's something I also had thought in my mind that it's probably like that. I hadn't read it anyway. So so as an African, so if we were to choose identities, so when people call themselves the Batwining amongst the Batswana, you've got the totem of the, I think it's the monkey. I don't know if I'm translating it correctly into English, but it's a Tsweni is a primate. It's either an ape or a monkey, one of the two. So it's one of the totems. Now, if you're born as a Batsweni, you cannot say, you know what, I don't think I'm more like a lion, you know. So yeah, I think I'm gonna be a Batawung. It doesn't work like that. You are what you. It's not a matter of choice. It's not something you shop around for. So I'm bringing that in to address the concept of African atheists. If you're an African, you're an atheist, you derive your identity from Europe. Plain and simple. There is no African people that have ever existed from the ancient times until today that are atheists. What I mean by atheist, before people start bringing into the whole concept of the definition of an atheist, or like the way feminists like to come in and say it's misinterpreted. But what I mean by that, because then other people come and say, no, there's an atheist and there's this and that, and it's trying to define. So what I mean by that is someone saying there is no God, plain and simple, or by there is no creative force, or there is no intelligence behind creation. Things just happen randomly. Our ancestors believed in God. Whether God is it's not necessarily mean they interpreted God as a being or um, or anything like that. It could be, if you look at the Congo cosmology, when you follow the creation story, it gives you the chaos and then the intelligence of how everything comes into being, or the planets and everything. It doesn't speak about a person forming or with his hands and taking and forming a planet. It doesn't spell it out like that. It actually, if you, uh, through the study of the Congo cosmology, I actually found the origin of the Big Bang Theory, and I also found that the man that so when I found that while reading, studying the Congo creation story, I then obviously I saw right there that this is it speaks of an explosion, where all the different heavenly bodies come out of the particles from that explosion. And then it even talks about the condensation that forms water, that forms the seas and the rivers and all that. Very interesting cosmogram, and is very aligned with science at the end of the day. That's one thing about just African cosmology. It's not created out of what is this projection, self projection from self limitation. Like, for example, if you look at like the the biblical creation story, it's rather they are trying to avoid certain things and ducking and diving, because the sun, if you look at the Bible creation story, the sun is not in the center. They've removed the sun, and it doesn't make sense because the sun is created on the fourth day, which is it just ends the whole story. It just doesn't make sense. How do you account for the first day, the second, and the third day without the sun, the moon, and the stars, which are created on the fourth day? So yeah, that is just basic ABCs of science. Yeah, I know some people would wanna think it's a debate, but it's not. You can't have time without the sun, the moon, and the stars. You know, they are the derivatives of time, or basically. So, so the concept of being an atheist would be an example of descent. The second concept of descent that I've picked up is in relation to the discussion I had with the elder. So I had this discussion, it was actually last month. And so it was a very interesting discussion. So the elder explained to me, because it started with me I had noticed, because I love language, I love linguistics, I love how African languages have words that direct you to the mindset or the philosophy of the people that form the language. I've given a few examples in my tweets. So the latest one that just popped in my head while minding my own business is how in the isiZulu language, a doctor, if you can call it a doctor, inyanga. What you call inyanga, a doctor is inyanga. The moon is also called inyanga, exact same word, which then brought me to the quest and the search into what that could mean. So I then shared my views with the elder, and the elder laughed and smiled again. It's like, yeah, it's like that actually. And he explained. So now he came into the information about the spiritual levels where you have inyanga. I didn't know these things actually before. I knew there was a difference between a herbalist and a sangoma. Yeah, sangoma. I think a more proper, I don't know if more appropriate English translation would be a sanusi, which the barbaric invaders of our land call them witch doctors. And so, because everything African is witchcraft anyway to them. Yeah, so even science, when they discovered chemistry in Europe, they call it magic, black magic. The word black magic comes from being associated with us. So now the what he then broke down to me is that the difference between inyanga, sangoma, prophet, which is a prophet, and umthakathi. Umthakathi is a witch. So I must just remember to translate these words into English, bearing in mind that not everybody understands Zulu. So he then explained, I think I'll leave out maybe the prophet. I wasn't very interested in that one because that one was introduced with the introduction of religion. It was then Africans have always, whatever foreign thing you give them, they always localize it. It's just like you go all around the world where you find black people that speak English, they throw in their culture. I mean, it's just natural. Being African is more of a spiritual thing than anything. That's why I don't even want to use pidgin English as an example. I'll just use, for example, African Americans. They will say they'll double a word to emphasize the word, like are you hungry, stuff like that. But white people, English people, do not speak like that. The reason why African Americans would use a language like that is because that is how it's used in Africa. All over, you have people called the Khoi people. So, Khoi. You call them Khoi. It's an emphasis, a double of the word throughout the continent. It means an emphasis, or the more it emphasizes on the word. So now when the Africans received religion, they took it and they localized it, So that's why you get prophet. But I'm not gonna go into prophet. But I was more interested in the difference between Inyanga and Sangoma. So Inyanga, the doctor, is the moon, and so the elder explained that Inyanga has no calling. It's not an ancestral calling, number one. It has nothing to do with your bloodline. It's just a gift you're born with. It has nothing to do with whether your father had the gift or not, or your mother or someone in your bloodline had it. So, and he actually said that Inyanga is above Isangoma. So Isangoma, I think, is the more famous one. Isangoma, as an ancestral calling, and you become an initiate, what they call in isiZulu Twasa. So you are initiated into the craft. You go through the process of initiation, and then you are under the guidance of I don't know if I should call them elders or the mentors. I don't have the right word for that, but there are certain things when you need to do them, you need to consult with your elders and get permission. That's what the elder explained to me. And so you are initiated into the craft. But in Nyanga, you are not initiated. You do not report to anyone. You speak directly to God. So the Inyanga steps out, looks at the heavenly bodies, looks at the constellations of the heavenly bodies, and listens to the message. And they tell him, these are the plants you should use. Well, to a lot of people, it might sound like superstition, but the question is, if you look at for example, if you look at the diet, the African diet, our ancestors domesticated a lot of plants from the wild, like that they would eat, and next to it grows something else, and they say, we don't eat that. So I always ask my mother, I'm like, how the hell did they figure this one out? Like, if you, for example, I'll give you an example with blackjacks. I think everybody knows what blackjacks are. Those plants that are very invasive of your fabric. There are seeds when you walk through the bush. Their seeds attach themselves to your clothes, and then when you remove them and throw them on the ground, you're actually doing their work, their reproductive work, because those black things that attach themselves to your clothes are actually the seeds. So as you're walking, you throw them somewhere else, they will germinate and grow. So you're spreading their lineage like that. So we eat the leaves in my culture. We eat those leaves. We call them shiji. And many different other names in other African cultures. So we eat those. For Europeans, those are weeds. Technically, every plant that almost every plant that grows in the wild, Europeans call it weeds. They probably just eat like pumpkin, mushrooms and stuff. But most of the things they have no comprehension of. But now, when you now go into this new age of plant-based diets and health and all these things, you then discover that all these foods that our ancestors selected within the wild. I mean, when you go into the forest, the plants, everything is there, like to really pick out what is weed and what is not, what can be eaten, what cannot be eaten. And I mean, I'm sure if you took grass and cooked it, you wouldn't get sick. I don't know. I've never tried it, but it's just so interesting that the things that they picked, the scientists, when they do their studies, they find that these things are very good, are very essential. They are now called superfoods. They are not just foods; they're superfoods. So that alone is amazing. And what our ancestors tell us is that they were told what these things, which ones to pick from the forest in order to deal with whatever ailment. They heard from the heavenly bodies, obviously from God, if you can put it like that, because the African concept of God, in fact, the word, a lot of people have, so like throughout the social media world, there's been a misconception of the word God, and say, backwards it spells dog and whatnot. But if you follow linguistics, a linguist will break it down to you. The word God, actually, the English word God, comes from, it has its root in an African language, which means to spring forth, or to something that extends its existence. So a woman giving birth to a child is an extension of herself. That is part of the definition of God. A man ejaculating sperm, which is his DNA, and then it springs out of him, and a part of him exists outside of himself. That is the root of the word God. It's a root definition. So anyhow, that's why I said nature. When nature speaks to you, is God speaking to you. So there is no separation in the African construct. So then the last part that he explained, which is umthakati, which is the witch. The witch is then, because I used to think so the witch basically is someone who wants to use the dark, has a dark heart. They want to use the art. So he explained that a witch starts out as a witch, and he actually gave the definition I used to always give of witchcraft. That witchcraft is actually, in my theory, envy is the beginning of witchcraft. Because if you see a young man your age is driving a nice sports car there, and is getting the honeys, and you are watching from the sidelines and not getting a piece of the action, You sometimes you hear comments like, maybe you can't even afford it. They'll take it after 6 months or whatever. You probably can't afford petrol and stuff like that. Like you hear guys talking, and then bam, if he has an accident, you're like, yeah, then you're happy about it. That's for me. That is witchcraft. Why would you be someone's demise be the source of your joy? So but yeah, so as the elder explained it, it just came, it matched with how I defined witchcraft. Hence, I remember driving from Botswana, and I was driving, I gave a lift to a few ladies, and they were talking about witchcraft and associating with a certain part of the country of South Africa. And I said to them, ladies, the biggest witch that ever existed is a European. And they're like, what? And I said, if you can get someone to hate themselves, because at the end of the day, Europeans were driven by the envy of our ancestors. So that's why even witches cannot bewitch white people, because you can't bewitch your masters. You cannot be above your masters. So now, why I explain these 3 levels. The Inyanga is above Isangoma, as the elder explained, and the lowest form being the witch, of course. One thing I came to understand is that some people need to stay in Christianity. And I need to explain why. What I've come to understand is that in the spirit realm, or the hierarchy of power, the witch is always below Jesus Christ. So a Christian who is very strong in the Christian walk can ward off witches using their faith. And that is something, my parents grew up in the northern province of South Africa, in Limpopo. For those that know the country, and they grew up seeing a lot of things, and they've told me even their transition to Christianity, the things that the stories they told me about people trying to bewitch them. You're dreaming someone walking into the window, but it actually happened. You wake up and you find the window open, and this person you dreamt about the next day, they used to greet you, as Africans always greet each other. They would walk and look the other way, and you'd be like, that wasn't a dream. And this is my mother telling me the story, and she was screaming out, Jesus, Jesus. And in my experience, I have seen, the power of religion to a certain extent. I've warded off certain things, even guns. But yeah, I don't want to go into the story, really. It's going to take too long. But so what I've found is that witches will submit to the Bible. They are at a level which is below the vibration of the Christian faith. So if someone walks in the high vibration of as a Christian, they do not have to be afraid of witches. That's what I've come to understand. So, but at their level, they are still prone to other predators. Because so as far as they can ward off witchcraft and all that and certain things, but that is not the highest level of power. Why am I saying that? If we look at how, as Africans, we've come to a point where we view Ubuntu as weakness, it has its roots in biblical. The biblical foundational culture, which is the story of Esau and Jacob. God hated Esau and loved Jacob, and Jacob is represents something that is opposite to Ubuntu, because his brother is hungry, and then he says, first give me your birthright, and then I'll give you food. That is anti-Ubuntu. In Ubuntu, when you come and visit, when you go into an African village, this is unadulterated, not this new school stuff. The first thing they do is they'll give you water to wash your hands and give you food. You cannot say I'm full. It's an insult to say I'm full. You gotta eat. So something I had to learn as a child, that you eat. They give you food. You eat food. In our culture is not just about being hungry. It's a handshake. So it's like refusing a handshake when you refuse food. But I think in today's new school villages, it's not a problem, I guess. But growing up, it was like that. So now the opposite of that, your brother is hungry now. You are saying, first you must give me this before I can give you food. If you look at that, culture has now permeated the African community. Everybody's for himself. Everybody's for herself. What can you do for me? Even the relationships that we have between man and woman are based on that. What can you do for me? It's no longer like our elders who met back when most of our elders, when they met, they were not working. They were too young at the time. They were mostly in college. They met in college and stuff like that. So there was no, oh, he earns this much, or she's got whatever. I don't know. So that is one of the reasons why it's like a competition. I was like, what can you do for me? So everything's about what can you do for me, so I can sort you out. What's in it for me. That's the biblical culture, whether people like it or not. That's the foundation of the story. If you know your Bible, you cannot even debate that. So that is what makes us shortfall, and the challenge that we have as Africans from rising into a position of power once again is that we are no longer community centered, but more individual centered. So this is where religion becomes a problem. So that's the level. So the highest level one can walk in is the level of Inyanga, and which are equivalent to the level of Heru. If you look at the difference between Jesus Christ is a carbon copy of Heru, of course, for people that understand the history. Now Heru represents the king of the sky, the falcon. The falcon flies very high, and the falcon can look into the sun. The falcon can see. Nothing is. It's like the Bible scripture says, nothing is hidden from under his sight. So the falcon represents the highest. As it represents ascension, because physically the falcon can fly really high. It represents ascension, really. So our aim should be ascension. Christianity is survival, personal, but you are stuck, you're still in trouble, or your generations are still in trouble because you cannot leave a legacy, because you cannot rebuild Africa using the Abrahamic religions. They divide us. That is just basic information. Anyone knows that. If you look at in West Africa, in Nigeria, the killings between the Christians and Muslims and stuff like that. So, and also the psychology that the Bible gives us is that a fellow Christian, your identity is your Christianity. As a Christian, you're a son of God, and your kinfolk that do not subscribe to the religion are not your brothers and sisters. That's what the Bible says. When Jesus was speaking in the crowd, someone said, "Isn't that Jesus of Nazareth and his brothers and sisters here with us?" And Jesus replied and said, "Who is my brother, my sister?" And he says, "The one that keeps the will of my Father is my brother, my sister, my mother, my father." And so what he was actually saying that is that my kinfolk are those that are Christians, basically. Those that are not, regardless of blood. So there it teaches you that blood is less important than your religion. So and unfortunately, because Black Africans are more devoted in terms of religion, we subscribe to that. Other races do not. White people do not subscribe to that. You will never find a white person that actually, all white people stand together, atheist, Christian, whatever, and everything. They agree on one thing. They'll never disagree about white supremacy. They are first white, then they are Christian, because they're not like us. We are spiritual people, so we tend to be real about these things at the end of the day. So yeah, so at the end of the day, Christianity is survival, personal. You can talk about prosperity for yourself and everything, and then but when we look at how Africans should view themselves, which is as a group, we have a group consciousness. That's why when you look at horoscopes, for example, horoscopes deal with your personal constellations, how the heavens affect you personally. But when you look at the zodiac, it speaks of, we are all in the same constellation of Pisces currently. Doesn't matter when you were born, but everybody, if you were born in this era, in the past 2,000 years, we've all been under the same constellation of Pisces. So that deals with the age, which is, if you go into, for example, into the Temple of Dendera in ancient Egypt, that the zodiac, the oldest zodiac that you find, which is there, speaks of the ages. It doesn't speak about what the horoscopes speak about. If you're Virgo and this is what's happening to you, so it's a group consciousness. And then if you look at our totems are part of the foundation of what gave birth to these things, the zodiacs and the horoscopes. So if you come from a family who are, when they say they are bakwena are crocodiles, it has to do with a spiritual traits that you as a family carry, not you as a person. So that is the difference between the European state of mind and the African state of mind. So if we are going to restore Africa, we need to have our consciousness should be more of a unified or more community or more ubuntu, because umuntu ngabantu. The correct translation is you are human because of other humans. So individualism makes you not human, according to African definitions. So now, so that's where Christianity becomes limited. And then the descent is atheism and people falling into places that do not know. They become prey to things like witchcraft. So someone could be can come and approach you and say, yeah, you've got a gift in this, and then you follow them and you do all these things and you don't even know what you're doing, because all you know is Christianity. You do not have and when we look at a lot of I think I'll give South Africa as an example. In 1994, when part of spiritual cultures were now legal, it was illegal to practice a lot of the things before. When it was then legalized, it became a trend, especially among celebrities, to become sangomas and people being initiated and all that. And now, if someone is a Christian and they then go and consult with someone, for example, and this person, just because someone is a sangoma, I respect the office, but it does not mean that the people are people who have ascended. A lot of them still walk around with the white supremacy. For example, we have the most famous Sanusi. The most famous Sangoma in South Africa was Kuto. He became a millionaire because the so-called architect of apartheid and British delegates used to go and consult white politicians, the giants of the white world, the people that were running the white world, were secretly consulting this guy. And if he could give access to these people, knowing they have come to destroy his own people, clearly this man does not represent Ubuntu. It does not have the spirit of Ma'at, which is truth, righteousness, justice, and reciprocity. So what we find is that people will then assume that, yeah, I was a Christian, now I've moved, and then being initiated as a Sangoma automatically means I've ascended. But what I'm saying is that you could leave religion and descend into the pit of hell. That's my take. And at this point, I'd just like to open for comments from people. If anybody wants to share, especially people that are no longer Christian, if we can start with those, if they can share a little bit of their journey and how they found the transition. Was it easy? Was it full of turbulence? If you'd like to speak, you put up your hand, and then I will then add you as a speaker. So, okay, we have one request. Khalil, okay, we've got the second one. All right, so, okay, Khalil, you're the first one to request, so you can come in. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where everyone and you are. I'm Mufani. I'm just glad to listen and hear your voice for the first time, and just very grateful. And I'm listening to you, and you could do a lot of these now on this spaces, because right now, I just like to listen to different perspectives. You were talking about those who have made the transition. I started off in Christianity, but I'm also undergirded by history, world history, and different histories of different peoples and groups. And my mother, who has been a teacher, she has the copy of a book called The Anacalypsis. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And that opened my eyes to so much information that the Bible doesn't talk about, but it gives a historical view on what this gentleman in the Anacalypsis wrote about. And so it helped me to level my understanding of Christianity, and also to see that, as you just stated in your conversation, Christianity is good for some people, to help them to evolve to a state of understanding as they hopefully ascend, but not to destroy their beliefs. But that's all I'm going to say right now. I have more I can say, but I don't want to hold up the conversation, so I'll just get off now.
All right, thank you, brother. And yeah, thanks for your take. And if if you have, if we do have time, perhaps you can share a little bit of if you had any challenges during a transition or not. And the book I think you mentioned is by Godfrey Higgins. I just googled it now. Okay, I think the next person is UFO TV, and then we'll have the Villager. I believe I've got the order correctly. Okay, you can. The floor is yours, Mr. UFO TV. UFO. All right. We're not hearing Mr. UFO. Yeah.
Yes. Are you listening me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations for your speech. It's really very good. So, for me, the only question is, can you define religion? Because religion, we have a religion since, I don't know, a lot of time ago, against Christ, against Jesus Christ. Religion, it's a part of the human being. So, again, congratulations, and please define religion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me do that before I give to the Villager. All right. That's an important question because the word religion, people define it in different ways. Christians will say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. It's a new school term that has been used also in the Christian church. But what I mean by religion, obviously, people can classify any African spirituality as religion or African religion. But what I mean by religion in this context are the Abrahamic religions. There are other religions like your Buddhism and Hinduism and whatnot. So why I specifically speak of Abrahamic religions is they are problematic in the sense that they are more of a glorification of a culture. They say this is the only way, as opposed to the original spiritual systems. If you look at the history of African people, a person could be initiated into different spiritual crafts because it was not political in the sense of this is the only way. We never had that. We believe in, even Buddhism does not have that. It says there are many ways to enlightenment, many paths. Even in nature, if you see a tree at a certain place and people take a walk, there isn't one way to get to anything. Even mathematically, there are different ways to get to the same answer. So, where the Abrahamic religions, in this context, when I say religion, I'm talking about Abrahamic religions because they say this is the only way and everything else is demonic. Hence, I cannot be a Christian and fully embrace my culture because it says it doesn't allow you to it says the gods of the Egyptians are evil and these Ethiopians. So it's more of a glorification of a culture rather than a spiritual path. Yeah, so that's the definition there. I hope you happy with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. The Villager, talk to us. The floor is yours.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the continent, in the world. Thanks for the great speech you are opening, the whole speech and so forth. The question that I have, which you managed managed to touch on it, but I didn't get much of it. Let's talk about the origin. Where do we come from as the human beings? Because that is one thing that I'm puzzled of. The rest of things that you mentioned, some of them I do relate to them, I read through, but let's just talk about where these human beings come from. I'll appreciate if you can expand on that.
All right. Okay. I think that one will take us off a little bit from the subject, but I'll touch on it a little bit. Okay. So when you say where human beings come from, I don't know if you mean what religion tells us or what scientists tell us, because at the end of the day, basically, scientists, um, it boils down to the whole evolution. I'll tell you about the modern man having come from this man that evolved to that man and all that. So that is from a scientific perspective. When we look at spiritual systems, our ancestors, they taught that human beings were created by the gods, if I can put it like that. You see in the creation, for example, the ancient Egyptian creation story, you have a tomb um, giving, if I should say, he gives birth or he brings forth the eight so-called gods, which then these ones then create human beings. So and then the Bible then tells us that the Elohim is the one that created Adam, out of which everybody else came. But the only thing is that if you take the biblical or these stories, I mean, if you look at the ancient African creation stories, nobody really says they are literal, but they are more in line with scientific finds, if I can put it that way. But the problematic thing when we take the biblical one as literal is that now people say, yeah, well, God only made Adam, so which uncle, where did Cain have an uncle where he took a wife, So that's where it becomes problematic. But if people had clearly explained that the Bible is a parable, it's mythology, then it wouldn't be a problem for people to ask, so where did Cain get his wife from? What uncle? Because God made Adam, and out of Adam came out Eve, and then the two made the first or the third human being, So, yeah. So, obviously, in reality, where human beings come from is a mystery, because it's not like anybody was there to tell the tale. However, what I appreciate about the African so-called mythology or creation stories is that modern science is exclusively based on those, and a lot of the things that they find scientifically as facts were already told in these ancient African creation stories. So I'm not saying that they tell the whole story, but they do better than any other story that's ever been told yet. All right. I hope that answers your question. If it does, I will then hand over to Sunborn Allah. All right. I think you are now connected. Sunborn Allah. I see Blah is already on speaker. I forgot when I added you. You can speak after Sunborn Allah. Sunborn Allah. Okay. He's not coming through. Okay, while he's okay. And Blah is now off the speaker. Okay. Okay, Blah is back. Okay, Blah, perhaps you can speak while we wait for Son God Allah to connect.
Oh,
Oh, he's here now. Okay.
you can
Son,
hear me?
yeah, we can hear you, man.
Okay, yes, I wanted to touch on the origins of man. I would say, that we come from the water, even in the Dogon belief, they said that we come from the Nomo. The Nomo came from the water, and then we came on land, and then we evolved into human beings. We need to understand that as original people, that black is dominant. Anything else is recessive. You cannot get black people out of white people, but you can get white people out of black people. We are the original people. That when the sun set up on the earth, the first place that it set on was Africa. The first place that it was set on was Africa. This is why, you have the Ethiopians and the Africans, the West Africans, the Bantu, and all of these type of Africans, because when the sun set upon Africa, when the sun set upon the earth, that's where the original man came from. So it's a lot of different stories when it comes down to this, but I think the first thing that we as a people should start to work on is uniting, because we are under a spell. We are under a spell. The name Africa was given by the Romans. The Romans named ancient Carthage the land of the Afri. The Afri tribe lived there, so they call it Africa. So now, what has happened is that the whole continent is named Africa now, and we are under the spell of a Roman name. The Greeks named Ethiopia the land of the burnt face. There's a lot of things that are going on with us, when it comes down to religion. They took religion and they use it as a weapon against us.
Yeah.
Because we had our own religious beliefs. We had our own culture.
Yeah.
Why hasn't this happened to Buddhism? Why hasn't this happened to Hinduism? Why are they able to keep their culture and their religious history, but we are not? And there's a reason why. There's a reason why, because we are the original people. We pose a threat to their superiority.
That's true.
So if you free the mind, everything else will follow. But they're miseducating us. They're changing the narratives in history. Don't you know there are pyramids in Zinder, Nigeria? There's a pyramid there that's older than the Egyptian pyramids, 1,000 years older.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever, these are the things we must educate ourselves on. We're not anti-European, we're not anti-white or anything like that. We're just against what's wrong. We're against what's wrong, and we're for what's right. And the right thing is to free people and educate people and let them know the truth. Those who are in power right now are just totally telling us lies day after day after day. And when it comes down to religion, I cannot put myself in the guise of a religion and salute those who have colonized my people and are trying to kill me.
Yeah, that's true.
That's it for me. Thank you for having this. I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
And before you go, brother, have you been a Christian before? Or a Muslim or a Jew?
I was raised Christian as a kid.
Yeah.
And what happened is that I started reading.
Okay.
I started reading.
All right.
I started reading about ancient history and ancient religious beliefs and ancient cultures and stuff like that. And the bottom line is, when we're talking about religion, we're talking about something that someone else created, their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
So whatever their belief is, but they're using that as a colonization tool to grip the minds of those who they feel are inferior.
So at what age were you? At what age were you when you started drifting away from what you were raised
No,
under?
I was 15 years old. I started reading
Wow.
the Message to the Black Man by Elijah Muhammad. Then I started reading about Marcus Garvey. Started reading about there's a book called Matuna Tur that I read that has a lot to do about the ancient Egyptian oracles of Tahuti. So I started reading these things, and I started listening to a lot of podcasts on the radio and stuff, like Gary Bird and WLIB, and listening to John Henry Clark and Shechem and a lot of different anthropologists, and just hearing the truth.
Wow.
Hearing the truth. You have to, we have to learn who we are. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but yet I still know about the Bimalik tribe and Cameroon. I still know about the different tribes, the Dogon tribe, and the different tribes in Africa. I study about them to learn what their religious, what their spiritual beliefs are. Because we're not going to even say religion.
Yeah.
We're going to say spiritual. What their spiritual beliefs were, and if you study them, like from the Dogon and from the Nigerian tribes, the Yoruba, there's a relation. There's a relation to the sky god that they speak about. There is a relation.
True. Exactly. No, that's powerful. I must say you were very, very fortunate. I only transitioned in 2018. I discovered, I think the first scholar amongst the African scholars that I follow, the first one I discovered was Dr. Yosef Ben Shochanan. In December of 2017, I was watching his video. He was being interviewed by, I just forgot the gentleman. They were in Egypt at the various sites. My spirit was captured at that time, and I felt I'm gonna go there one day, probably in 10 years I thought, but the following year I went. But before I went, I had to do a lot of preparation work, and I had to get a lot of material. I had to get his book and many other material before going there, because I was already, even before I had started studying the stuff, I knew that I would be getting misinformation, obviously because the place is contested and the people that control the curriculum would tell the story, and the person that would be telling me the story would have gotten a degree at that institution that told them whatever lies they told them. So yeah, you're fortunate. 15, I wish I had. But I guess everybody's path is different, yeah.
But you know why it was that age? Because when I was younger, I went to a school where it was mostly white, and they were really racist. So I learned about myself to fight against them. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So when they were saying nigger, I was calling them devils, and they didn't like that.
Wow, yeah. All right. Yeah, thanks, brother. So I'd like to, anybody that has been a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, if they can put up their hand, and also just if you can share your experience in terms of your transitioning. How easy was it? Was it a turbulent one, or was it a smooth one? And while somebody is gonna share with us their story, I just wanna quickly just touch on the whole Abrahamic religions. I know a lot of people in the African liberation or information or scholarship tend to really think that these religions actually originated from the white man, but unfortunately we created our own problems. The Bible itself came from Africa. It was written in Egypt, and it was, if you really study it, I recommend a book called the Sons of God and the Daughters of Man. Um, it's by an author from Nigeria. I think it's Oduyepo, Dr. Oduyepo. I just wanna get his full name. So if everybody wants to get the book, The Sons of God and the Daughters of Man. It's a very, very, very brilliant book. It breaks down the Bible like you've never seen it broken down. And the brother actually explains who the Hebrews are in terms of ethnicity. So yes, there are Hebrew people. I actually even have a thread on that after reading the book. I finished it very quickly. That's how good the book is. It's also not very big, but the book is it's well written and it's quite loaded. So he breaks down who the Hebrews are and they're called the Habiru, obviously in the original languages. If in the ancient Egyptian texts you see them being spoken about in the Amana letters, and why in the Amana letters related to ancient Egypt at the time, the land of Canaan was part of the ancient Egyptian colony. So there's even a book by Keith Seal, When Egypt Ruled the East. So when you think of ancient Egyptian empire or the Kushite empire, uh, the people of the Nile Valley ruled a quite large number of Asia. That's how Asia today is known as a land of enlightenment. It's only because those people managed to retain what they obtained from our ancestors. And the reason brother, you touched on why these guys could maintain their religions and we couldn't. We need to really understand that we are very different. We are not like other people. We are a threat. If we really come to understand who we are, then we'll understand why these people wanna really eliminate us from the face of the earth. And I remember reading Chico, I think this Chico Onyani, the capitalist nigger, and when he makes a comparison to why countries like Ghana and Nigeria are not at the same, they receive their independence around about the same time as China and India, yet they are behind. And he associates that with, as if basically he's trying to make a comparison as if the oppression was the same. But the Europeans never really saw the Asians as a threat. You can even see when you go to China, not people don't really speak English. In any, I've been visiting China for years with work and stuff, and when you visit a company in China, there's always like one person in their whole company that speaks English, the rest don't. But they were colonized by the British. Yet, if you come to South Africa, everybody that you bump into in the streets will speak English. You actually think that's what we speak as a first language, but that's not what we speak. But it just comes to show that their target was never the Asians. Asians were never a threat to them. And that goes back to history, obviously, to what happened in history. Uh, the Europeans know us more than we actually know ourselves in general. And I've seen that when I visit our ancient, I have my passion is to go around and see ancient African heritage sites and document these sites. So everywhere that I've went, even I'll start here in South Africa. The first site that I've ever visited was Mapungubwe in Limpopo, and the only people that were there was myself, my sister, my brother, and I think about 4 Europeans that came from Scotland, not even from South Africa. And then the second one I think was Great Zimbabwe, and the third one was in Zaluyelanga. In Adams, it's called, white people call it Adams Calendar. When I was there, obviously, then it was my group that I was with, and there were white people from Canada. And so when I went to Ethiopia, Germans, I didn't see any African, except for the Ethiopians giving the tours around the place and whatnot, working there and stuff. And the only place where I didn't see Europeans was at the Great Zimbabwe Monuments. I only saw the Zimbabwean children that were there on a school tour. Basically, there was a school project. It was not something where somebody actually decided, I'm gonna go see the monuments. I mean, my friends in Zimbabwe were like, yeah, I know about it. I went there when I was a kid and all that, but there isn't that interest in visiting the sites. So when you look at that, you can see that Europeans have gathered a lot of information about us. They study us more than anybody. They sneak into these, you mentioned the Dogon, they like sneaking into these villages. NASA has sneaked into the village because they know what we carry. And we are quite oblivious of that, unfortunately. So they know why they fear us. First of all, even the word when white people Europeans came to call themselves white. Europeans did not know they were white until they saw black people. That's something people tend to think that we call ourselves black because of Europeans, but it's the other way around. It's the truth. Because before Europeans came to Africa, you can see in our ancient monuments, black was the color of deity. There are literal black people. Just go to East Africa. Go look at the Dinka people. Some of them are black. So that's the real black. But there is no white person. You will never find a person that's actually white. So for them, it was a yin-yang position. They realized, okay, since these guys are white, we are opposed to them. That's why even when they everything they do, they oppose us. They watch us move, then they move in the opposite direction because they've come to understand. Like, for example, the Masonic Eastern Star. They took the star of Assad. It's an upright star. If you look at the American flag, it's put upright. But the Eastern Star is put upside down. And you ask yourself why. It's because their move is really to embrace being our opposition. We are the prize, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke said. We are the prize, or we've always been the prize of the world. So the Pope does not pray to the Indian Madonna and Child, the Chinese Madonna and Child. The Pope prays to the black Madonna and Child. I pray to the black woman in secret. So there's something that we have not come to understand, just as the elder Ashwa Kwesi says that somebody knows something about you that you do not know about yourself. So that is where we are currently. So in terms of the religions that we, or as I was speaking about the Habiru, they formed the whole Torah. The Habiru were not just black people. If you really follow the whole thing, some of them fall under your Semitic people, because if you look at really history, ancient people didn't really have this racial consciousness. And so even when you study, that's why genetics, anybody that uses genetics to try and prove ancient Egyptians were this race, genetics do not prove anything. If anybody wants to see that, I can share even some of the information. I've been studying these things. Human beings will cluster, depending on what methods you use, will cluster in very different. There are certain haplogroups that certain groups of Africans share with Europeans, yet they are your neighbor is an African, but they share this haplogroup with Europeans that you don't share with them and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy. But the Habiru, when they formed Christianity, or rather the Torah, I would say in the beginning, it was in response to because the Habiru, many of them lived in Kemet. Some of them, one of the things that are true, like if you look at any written fictional literature, it carries obviously certain levels of historical truth. So I know some people that subscribe to the Bible history would wanna use those, but then if you watch the Da Vinci Code, it has a lot of historical truth. It's set at there's a is it Lavore or whatever pronunciation it is in Paris. It's a real physical place where it's shot, and it doesn't mean that the Da Vinci Code is real. It involves a lot of factual things. So that's the thing about ancient mythology. Ancient mythology was always set along the lines of truth and facts. Because even when you tell a story to children, our grandmothers didn't tell us stories about people with 7 heads. They used real stories, Yeah, except, of course, they told us about lions and rabbits that speak. So, but obviously for a reason. But now, if you the one of the stories in the Bible that is a historical fact is the invasion of Palestine, or the invasion of the land of Canaan, rather, not Palestine, the land of Canaan, because it encompasses more than Palestine or Israel. So that we find historically in the Amana letters, where the overlords of the land of Canaan were writing to the Pharaoh requesting military assistance because the Habiru were invading them. Habiru lived also in Kemet and all that. And what Dr. Odiepo does in the book, it even shows the migration of these Habiru people. And one of the groups, he uses a lot of West African languages to show how they align with Hebrew, because the Habiru live amongst the West Africans. Like, for example, the Fulani people are part of that group of the Habiru. He mentions the Nguni people, and so on and so on. So the Habiru had a culture which was rather barbaric, if I may put it like that, because they were pastoral nomads. They believed working the ground was a curse, because they never worked. They were lazy, so they lived in tents. That's why the Bible tells you that Jacob lived in tents. He was a shepherd. They wanted to live by what nature provides. They never wanted to cultivate the land. Hence, in their story, working the land is being a slave to the land. That's why they say faith is like when you have faith, you are like the birds that neither sow, reap, nor gather into barns. That they speaking of agriculture, they actually, if I may use the word, shitting on agriculture, because they're saying we don't need that, all that trouble. God will provide for us like it does for the birds. But then at the end of the day, when they see all the harvest, then they get jealous and then they would invade. So the ancient Egyptians wrote a lot about the Habiru, saying they are very barbaric savages. They have always been fighting since the time of Heru. No one conquers them, and they never defeat anybody because the Habiru never really use a toe-to-toe battle. They would invade at night, take your cattle, take your women, all these crazy stuff. So these are part of our ancestors. So the Habiru had a culture. So when the Europeans came, they found that the Habiru culture was much closer to the European. So the Europeans then grabbed the Bible because the whole Habiru culture was more in line with the European, and then the Europeans then took hold of the Bible. Obviously, they then changed a lot of things. The Habiru did not believe in the original Habiru did not believe in. If you look at the word Elohim, it's a plural. It means the gods. It's even revealed in the book of Genesis where it says, "Let us make man." Who's us? And it says, "Let us go and see the city that the children of or the sons of men have built. Let us." And it says, "Behold, man has become like one of us." Who is one of us? It's not one person. It's not. It's God. So the word Elohim, it means gods. So it's just that later on, the people that took on the religion decided to switch it around and follow the path of Akhenaten. Because Akhenaten believed in just following, I think it's Atum, yeah, and not just, it's Aten, not Atum, yeah, Aten, yeah. So yeah, anybody else that wants to share with us their experience, how they transitioned from being a Christian to where they are, and what advice can you give a person that is now in the wilderness or is about to jump off?
Okay, can I say something finally?
Yeah, speak. We have a lady. I like a balance, guys. We've had guys speak. Can we have more ladies? Yeah, speak, my sister.
Okay, so I guess I've got two parts. I'll start with my transition from Christianity. So luckily for me, I was raised Zulu, so with all our cultural practices, and I used to have questions for my father, like why do we do things that we do? And then at school, I'm taught different things, and I guess luckily for me, my parents were already out of the Christian setting, and they always just pushed me away from I guess white people's way of doing things, and it was important for me to understand why I, as a black Zulu person, follow things that we follow. But of course, because indoctrination is strong, I ended up being a Christian, and my great-grand was a Christian as well. So I started questioning things when I wanted to make it make sense. Like, if God is everywhere, how come God isn't with my ancestors? Or how come God isn't in the space of our cultural practices according to the church? And eventually that led me to stop going to church when in 2012, stop going to church, but I still believed in God. And somebody said to me, what if the Jesus story is just a story to put a point across? And for me, that was very pivotal because I'd never thought about it like that. And I started wondering, is it a story? Where did it come from? And I guess that's what led me to digging deeper into what is religion? What is it for? Who benefits from this? And my dad always says that if white people can oppress us, why do you think they'll give us heaven? And also, if heaven exists, why isn't everyone just committing suicide and going there? So I started asking myself like all these things, and you know what? I think that it's important now, with all that I know now and discovered for myself, even after the phase of researching and seeing what other people have to say about things and familiarizing myself with who the Egyptians were and all of that, what I realized is that we end up being trapped in this debunking phase, and we want to show white people that actually we are great. All these things that you guys say about us aren't true, but time is moving, and as that's happening, we're not making the changes that we need to be making. We end up being in this cycle of proving to people that, no, guys, we the Egyptians did this, we built this, we built it, and then what? Because unfortunately that doesn't take us to the next step. It just takes us to a place where we're not as bad as you guys think. So so I guess that's where I'm at right now, and I realize that we need to create a whole new system, because this system that we currently have is not broken. It's exactly how they want it to be. And I think also this phase of where people are slowly waking up, but going towards proving to these people that they're actually better than what we're being taught to be, is also part of this system, because still we're not creating the new system. We're getting stuck in another cycle, and it's going to take a long time. And a last final point that I want to add is, I think it's great that we now can trace our roots back to the Egyptians, but at the same time, it doesn't help to trace your roots so far back when you don't know your roots right here, when you don't know yourself, and I think it just leaves a huge gap in between our understanding, because now you're kind of adopting another identity before you even familiarize yourself with the current identity that you have. So yeah.
Very powerful, very powerful. I think, but you've robbed us a bit. You've told us about how you've transitioned. So now, are you in the wilderness, or do you have a spiritual practice that you're following? Is it now more your Zulu culture, or how do you walk the earth as a spiritual person now that you put the Bible away? Do you still pray? Like, people ask me, do you still pray? Do you still,
So you know what? I'm at a place where now I can connect to God in a way that makes sense to me, and I'm not looking for answers outside of myself anymore. And I now realize what the importance of my ancestors is, and also I now know that what I recently learned, but I guess I already knew, is that whenever there's a trauma that happens to one of your ancestors, because of course we all come from other people, whenever a trauma happens to them, it actually alters the DNA. So now we find ourselves in places where we have these generational curses and all these things, but it's just because we haven't fixed certain things that happened to our genes before we came. So if you don't even know why your whole family is set up the way it's set up, it makes it very hard for you to even know why you are the way that you are. So luckily, as I said, my parents have never been religious. So we've worked on a lot of things in my family that were not fixed back then. Like just looking at the relationship dynamics of family, who did what to where, like why, and all of that, that's helped so much. And also now, the person that I am, I can trace bits and pieces of my great-grandmother, my grandmother, gifts that I have. I see, this person wanted to achieve this during the time, and this is how far we got. So how do I progress and add on to that? So now I operate from, I guess, I now see exactly why I have the lineage that I have, and what do they want from me, and what do I want as well with myself. So yeah, I think it's so hard, like, for where I'm at right now, because there's almost like very little room for self-doubt, because there's some things that only I'll know for myself. And you know, you want a tribe, you want people that understand, and can maybe add on, but then it's already, most of the time I find that it's things that we already know. It's like, okay, but what's the next level? Like, does anybody know? And I know that by going inward, that's when I'll know. But I just want other people to, you know, to share that with as well. But I guess, yeah.
No. I'm feeling you right there. Yeah, I'm glad you broke that down, because I think the challenge also for me is that when you were back as a Christian, you had a tribe. Because as African people, at the end of the day, we are like lions. Lions never hang around alone. They've got a pride, so we operate effectively in a pride. So the same as myself, I also find myself now in a state of solitude, just like as you've mentioned, because you don't have, like we used to have back in the days in church. You had this whole community of Christians, and even though it was not like a real community, it was more like only on Sundays and whatnot. But yeah, at least if we had a little bit of
So I just wanted to say also with the Bible, also I guess now I see that the Bible, what it wanted to put across, and why us as Black people resonate so much with it, because there are some truths in there, but then I don't know, I guess you have to see things in a certain way to understand some of those things. I was at a funeral the other day, and you know, the practice where they do communion.
Yes.
And I was looking at this thing, and I was so perplexed, and I was thinking, this is what we do, kumsebenzi, like when we slaughter the animal as offering, and then we call the whole community to eat with us. This is exactly what they're talking about.
Really?
You know? And that's why, I was like, we resonate with this because there's some truth for us in there, and we already practice these things in our cultures, but then it's just, they've demonized our culture so much, and they make things seem like they're different just because they put different labels on them.
Exactly. So now, you say why? That's the part where I envy people like you. I've got a friend. Her name is Mbali. I think I should have invited her. I met her through her cousin. She's also Zulu, and Christian. But the difference is their family grew up still embracing their culture. They were like, nah, the Bible can take second place. If it fits in, it fits in. So, which is very different to my family. My family was the Bible. Even if you're facing death here, it's the Bible. It was almost close to how Jehovah's Witnesses would tell the doctor not to give their child blood until the child dies because of that decision. So it was quite extreme. So what is that feast called? Or is it where?
Just like the Thanksgiving one.
All right.
When you have something to say thank you for,
Yeah, you know why that's interesting? I think you need to get that book, The Sons of God and the Daughters of Men. Because I know in terms of linguistics, he touches more on West Africa because he's from there. But in the groups that form part of the Abiru, he mentions the Nguni people. So, I mean, there's quite a lot of things that you find in terms of biblical practices that are in line with the Nguni culture, things such as the slaughtering, like you're saying, Msebenzi. That's the Passover. Yeah. That's the Passover in the Bible. You know,
Yeah.
the what you call is tembu in Zulu, polygamy, for those that don't understand that part. It's throughout the whole Torah. It's tembu. It's so-called polygamy, and the way it's done, it wasn't about the way people think polygamy is about a guy with insatiable sexual desire, but it was never really about that. Even when you look at the Bible stories, the women actually were in the forefront of, I mean, if you look at Jacob, his wives were the ones bringing in their maids and saying, sleep with this one, and the baby would come out, and then he built the whole nation out of that. It was about nation building and whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah.
I really recommend that book. So yeah, thanks for your input. It's very powerful, and I think you should probably share some of your cultural practices on your wall. I think so that we can check them out and share some of, so we can see some of the similarities. I wish in my family they completely abandoned culture, unfortunately, because of religion. There are certain things my parents, as growing up, they used to do, but they would not even tell us. My parents wouldn't even. I only so in 2018 I left Christianity. 2019 I learned about my family history from my paternal side. I'm Shangan, by the way, from Limpopo. But then for the first time in 2019, I learned, I was already a grown man, learned that my grandfather came from Eswatini. So part of our lineage is Swazi as well, stuff like that. They would say it, but it had no context. I would not accept it. It was like, whatever. So but that's where I think my journey personally has helped me in many ways. It's something I would not even. I mean, I remember when I was in a flight to Egypt in 2018. I called my mom and I called her sister, and they're like, "You're wasting money. Just give me that money," you know, because for them it's like, "Why are you spending so much money going and digging the past?" You know, so a lot of people don't understand that you will never find on earth any dominant people that are oblivious of their history. The most dominant group, whether it doesn't matter how you would define, when I say dominant, yeah, any dominant group it usually has a very strong sense of history. You know, it would be the Yoruba people, the Amazulu, the people that everybody knows about, people that when they move with a certain level of dominance. Even if the white people that run this world, they know their history and our history more than we do, because that's just how it works. You know, people tend to think history is the past, but no, we are living history right now. The reason why there's a brother when I was flying from Namibia yesterday. He's like, "Yeah, how are you gonna talk about history? You know, it just keeps you in the past." I'm like, "No, brother. History is the present. You 5 minutes ago you were complaining that Germans own the land of Namibia, while the Namibians do not have land. That's the present according to you, but that is a history. The only reason why Germans own Namibia is because of history." So if you don't know your history, how are you going to resolve the history in order to change it so you have a different future? So that's what's up. Anybody else, especially the queens, the ladies, if you can share your experience, your path, uh, transitioning from Christianity or Islam or Judaism. Did you Were you on a path of ascension or a path of descent? I know it's not easy to admit that one has gone on a path of descent. It takes courage to say, "No, I was better off. I better go back," because truly speaking, while Somandla is trying to connect the truth of the matter is, if you do not have a drive to ascend beyond, yeah, well, the Bible is not original, so I'm leaving. If you do not want to ascend to a higher, you do not have a desire to find truth beyond that, to ascend to your higher self, the falcon in you, then I would say stay where you are in religion, because out there is the jungle. If you're not equipped, you are prey to a lot of things, because it's a world that you are not. It's a jungle. It's a wilderness. You need to be equipped. Just like in the Bible it says, they must go into the wilderness. But they cannot go through a certain path because they are not equipped to fight. I think it's the Amorites or whatever that they would not go through that place. But yeah, is there anyone else? One more person, and then I think we can close. It's been a good session. We are almost at 2 hours. We don't want to make it too long. And by the way, oh yeah, Somandla, the floor is yours. Okay, well, Somandla is connecting to speak to us. I would like to, actually want to share this conversation on YouTube. So I'd just like to know if anybody has an objection, especially the people that were speaking. If you do not want your voice to be out there in the public, please put up your hand.
Please have this again. Indeed, I like talking about.
Yeah. Pardon?
Many times.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Please repeat. Please repeat that. Mr. Khalil. Please repeat.
I'm sorry, I said please have these spaces again, because this is what I live for. I like to sit and talk and, learn from different people. But what I've heard today, I had church today.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I think that if with what you're saying, I think that can be done. We can just call them Sunday brunch, or brunches on Sunday, break bread. Maybe we can have it if not every Sunday, maybe every fortnight or something, every second Sunday. But yeah, I think we can organize that, and have a space to share our experiences and the way forward, because so that people understand that they're not alone in this whole transitioning. Mr. Somandla, I think if you have connected, and one more time, anybody that, especially the people that have spoken, if you have an objection to this space being posted on YouTube, please let us know now, or forever hold your peace. Yeah, we don't want nobody suing us. Yeah, this is for the people that have already spoken. So yeah, anybody else, I think, because I'm just saying it now because we didn't put it up in the title that it's going to be for YouTube, yeah. So Mandla.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, I hope you're well, my brother. But yeah, greetings to everyone. So,
Peace.
First, I kept on missing it. I have network issues. I did get the title of the book,
Sons of God and the Daughters of Men.
Sons of God, Daughters of Men. And there's a lot of books, and I just couldn't get the author. So that is the main reason I'm here. And I just want to type out the author. So if you could assist me with that, because every time you say the author, my network goes,
Okay, all right. Let me get the book.
And while you're looking for it, my second one is the same thing that Brother Kartik said, that, we need more spaces like this so we can talk, and hopefully we'll definitely find truth. And yeah, I don't know why you no longer hold spaces, but yeah, we need that.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. No. I didn't know you guys wanted them.
And lastly, which
Yeah.
is me, I'll definitely moonwalk to be a listener after this, is what my sister Upla said. I think he gave a good description of where I'm at. I'm not in the wilderness. Okay, I'll just give a quick summary of me. I'm Zulu too.
Okay.
And I was born in Christianity.
Christianity.
I was born into it. So, yeah, for sure. So I've been a Christian the most part of my life, right? Until I think about maybe 5 years ago, right? Where I decided to go to the wilderness, like drop everything and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And I am here now because I'm more advocating for African spirituality, which is Isintu,
Yeah.
So I'm actually going through that transition, learning about Isintu, because I now look at Christianity, I look at all the other religions the same way I look at political parties in the physical world. I see them as political parties in the spiritual world, because they do exactly the same thing. They advocate for themselves. They even have struggle heroes. It's definitely that to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, okay, I think my line is bad again because I can hear you talking, but I can't make up what you're.
Oh, no, continue. No, I was just saying amen. All right. So the title is The Sons of God, The Sons of the Gods. Yeah, The Sons of the Gods and the Daughters of Men. The author is Modupe Oduyoye.
Okay, I got that. Thank you very much.
All right.
So that's this is no offense to anyone, but this is how I now have a view of the world, that the way it is shaped, the way I see it in the physical world, that's how it translates into the metaphysical world, into the spiritual world. So I just see the other religions as them advocating, saying, the same thing as any other political party. I'm in South Africa, the same thing that ANC says will do for you, the same thing. And they also have struggle heroes, just like all religions have certain struggle heroes. They would say, the so-and-so died for us. So it's just the same concept to me. So the way I'm living now in the physical world, that's how I actually am living in the spiritual world. So that's what I wanted to share. Thanks, my brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input, brother. So I promise you won't regret. This book is it's one of the best I've read. I think if you might be tempted to finish it in a day. Yeah, it's also not a very big book. It's about 116 pages or so. Yeah, so indeed, I think it's important, this conversation for me, why it was important. A lot of that people leave Christianity for various reasons. Some of them is not because of enlightenment, because they are disgruntled with the religion. As you've said, that empty promises and stuff like that. Now, one of the catalysts to my transformation, I grew up listening to hip hop in the 90s, more like your so-called underground, and they had all this crazy content. It was not like your radio, MTV, whatever stuff that you see in the music videos. It was deep stuff, and the one group that really contributed the most was a group called Dead Prez, Stickman and M1. So in one of the songs, they talking about telling lies to our children, telling lies, and so one of the rhymes, the guy says, when we should go up to the Pentagon and grab the intercom, and my first words will be, I believe man made God out of ignorance and fear. If God made man, where the hell would he put us? Yeah. So a lot of people would then become atheists because they're like, what the hell is this God? Where was this God when my parents uh, died or whatever, or were killed, or my mother was shot, whatever, all the crises that people go through, and then you go to church, and then you've experienced something like that, and someone says, yeah, in church they like saying, Christians like saying, yeah, you're alive. Some people are in hospital, so you need to praise God. But then, if it's your family member that's in hospital, you're like, okay, so we shouldn't be praising God now because we're in a place of crisis. But yeah, so people will then question. A lot of the times, I find that people who are atheists do not necessarily question the whole concept of a creator or intelligence behind creation. And most of them have beef with the God of the Abrahamic faith because of how the God is portrayed in the Bible, and they do not resonate with. So, so for me, why this conversation was very important is it's, I think, the most dangerous place to be at. I know being a Christian is dangerous. There are levels of danger. It's dangerous, but some people might not know it, but it's dangerous. I I almost I completely abandoned my health because of the Christian faith. The Bible says, by his stripes we are healed. Don't tell me I shouldn't eat this and that. The Bible says you can eat whatever you want. So it depends on your level of commitment. Some people, they are not really, they don't dive in like some of us. They go into their religion like black people into the pool. With black people put their feet first in the pool. They're like, oh, the water is cold. White people dive in with their heads right into the deep end. So I'm just generalizing now. So yeah, if you're a good swimmer, I'm not saying. Yeah. So so there is a difference. If you are really, the more committed you are to religion, the more dangerous it becomes, because there are concepts of such as giving, trusting God. When you now they're about to repossess you, you go and give your money to the church, saying, "I'm doing this by faith, that God will come through for me." Instead of, if you could have taken that money and made a deal, to not be repossessed, but you figured if you give it to the church, then God, because it's in the Bible, with the woman of Zarephath, where I think it was Elijah who said, when she said, "This is the last meal I'm going to make, I'll eat with my sons and we die." And he said, "No, let me eat first, then you'll be aight." So that is being preached in the church. Obviously, within the church, there are people that don't take it that seriously. There are people that fully believe in it. Some people even give their whole salary, they call it first fruits, even though it's not really biblical. First fruits is a whole different story. They would take their first salary and give it to the church. And when they stop, they're like, "No, it's the devil testing me." So it does get real. That's the more you go into it. So that's why I never take criticism about, a criticism from a Christian who is not, who has not gone deep into the religion. Like I was, like from the family I came from. I tell people this whole 10% tithe, when I was giving that, I never even skipped 1 month for all the years that I worked, and it was so many years. I always gave it, never skipped a month. And I tell them, if you have never walked that path, where you've never skipped a month, where you decided not to go to the doctor because the book of Isaiah says 53 or 54, whatever, says that by stripes we were healed. If you've never really been in that deep, you cannot have the conversation with me. If you are free to move from when you're sick, you go to the pastor, he lays hands on you. If it doesn't work, you go to the doctor. If the doctor doesn't work, then you go to the inyanga. Then you are flowing, you are moving, you are more fluid. You are not restricted like people that really go deep into the religion. Yeah. So with that being said, I think we can end it here. Today we can always have these kind of conversations, and so I see someone end up.
Yeah, no. I wanted to say that no, the conversation is ending. I wanted to say that the funny thing enough, now that I've been on this self-discovery journey,
Yeah.
and when I started Christianity, I'm so sorry, it's raining where I'm at. I hope the background noise is not irritating you guys.
No, we like the rain, don't worry.
I like the rain too. I like the rain anyway.
Yeah.
So funny enough is that I now have gone back to praying,
Yeah.
because of I now understand energy and vibrations, I do pray to acknowledge my ancestors. I also pray to certain energies, because everything is energy, dependent on what I am going through at the time. But when I pray now, I pray to energies, that hold. Where I want to vibrate, I speak to that energy, but again, we will have this, and hopefully we'll contribute more. Thanks, Musoni, man.
All right, it's a pleasure. Thank you, brother, and thank you to everybody for listening and for sharing. And I will, as I've said, I will be posting this up on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and then I will share it on my wall. And yeah, for the last time, anybody that doesn't want their voice or face on YouTube, please put your hand up now, speak now, or forever hold your peace. All right, thank you very much. Peace and black power. I'm out.